Welcome to episode 15 of Basics and Beyond the podcast. Today, our guest is Meryl. She is the head coach, CEO, and all around Wonder Woman of Wicked Iron Strength. She's a trainer, she's a health coach, she is an amazing person. Today, we dive really deep into self-sabotage, and we turn self-sabotage on its head. You're going to want to hear this conversation. If you have ever self-sabotaged, which haven't we all, this episode might hopefully change your mind and your perception about self-sabotage and how you can use it to your advantage.
Tell us about you.
Yeah, Wicked Iron Strength is my coaching company. And I started it, 2018 2018 officially. So this is when I was an independent contractor for like 5 different people when I first started coaching. And when we moved overseas, I was like, I'm going to start my own thing. And so I started, then it was Wicked Iron Strength and Conditioning. And then I rebranded 3 years ago to Wicked Iron Strength. And it's just me. It's my hope in the future to expand and add more coaches.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I didn't want to have something that was my name in coaching. I didn't want it to be about me.
Yeah. How did you come up with the name?
Well, I'm from the Boston area, so that's where the Wicked is from.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it was like a brainstorming, and it just sounded all of the ideas that I had written down at the time. This was what just felt right. So,
wow. And are you still overseas or are you back in the US?
No, we live in Illinois. We live in it's actually closer to Missouri. Like I'm pretty close to St. Louis area.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been here for, well, now I guess 3.5 years, since early spring of 21.
Gotcha.
It was wild.
Nice. My sister and I and a couple of her friends did a road trip to Atlanta from Minneapolis last year at this time. And of course, everybody nowadays, we just use Google, just put the address in and shoot. And we ended up and I'm not going to remember the name of this little teeny town. And it was literally just on the border of Illinois and Missouri and the southern part. And it was the craziest little town we were like, oh, this is interesting to visit. Probably don't want to live there. I wish I could remember it because it was so, how you just put stuff into Google and you just go, and sometimes you end up going through some really interesting places. That was the best. That was very fun. I imagine that is not the type of area you live in.
Is it like East St. Louis? Now I'm curious where
it was. You know what? I will look it up and I will message it to you because, my God, I can't remember. And literally it's this little town right on the river. Right on the river. We crossed over the river and I think we were in Missouri, and then we had to cross, but it was this whole thing. But there's really not many people in this town, but there's a huge history to this town. Like back in the railroad days and things like that. I'll let you know.
Yeah, I'm curious.
It was pretty interesting. You probably don't want to go visit, but it was really interesting on our drive to it.
Yeah, I mean, that's what because we've moved around so much, it's just and we're both from New England, so we used to live in New Mexico, and we've driven back in those places, I think 6 times. And it's like, you see so much stuff that you never thought you would.
Yeah. So get off the freeway, have a good time. Yeah. So you grew up in New England.
Mm-hmm.
Have you always been interested in training and health coaching and all of that? Has that always been your thing?
Yes and no. I guess I went to school for sport management. So that's what my degree is in. I actually really wanted to do sport medicine. So it's so interesting because I went originally applied to school as a psych major. So it's like such a full circle
Sure.
moment for me now where I really was interested in psychology. And then I got very into, in high school, I took an athletic training class and I was like,
Mm.
oh, this is so cool. I love this working with athletes and just helping them move better. And then I went to school. Had already gotten into school. I switched to sport management because it was like the closest thing I could do.
Mm.
And was also taking like prereqs to go into sport medicine on the side.
On
And
the
then
side.
on the side, yeah, like my extracurriculars were anatomy and physiology because I was
There you go.
a person.
There you go.
So then I got a job working for the 76ers in the event.
What?
Yeah, so I worked for the 76ers for I did internships and then actually worked full time there for like 4 or 5 years. So that sidetracked me. I was in the event side, events and operations, and that was actually before I graduated college. And so,
That's amazing.
yeah, so then I got laid off during the NBA lockout.
Oh no.
Like it was horrible at the time, but it was a blessing in disguise because I went back to school. I finished my degree, which I only had like a couple classes left to do. And I got really into fitness at the time. Like I was going to CrossFit classes and getting really into strength and fell in love with that. And then I moved to the middle of nowhere, New Mexico, to be with my then boyfriend.
Mm.
And that's how I got into coaching because I was like, what the heck am I going to do out here? And I went to the gym, which I was really comfortable in. And I
Mhm.
was like, I could do this. So
Wow.
that's
So did you
coach.
start then as a trainer? Just
I,
training people or what?
I mean, I was really just like, I had nothing to do. The job that I had at the time was really just to like fill my time. I hated it, to be honest.
Mhm.
And so I was spending as much time as I could in the gym. I didn't know anybody. So I was like, this is where I will heal my depression.
Oh yeah.
And so I was just shadowing people. I was just shadowing the coaches and asking like if I could come and help. And I just really enjoyed working with the people and asked how I could get into that and then got certified and started taking on some personal training clients, doing some group fitness. I worked on the base and off the base and with a high school team and like I
Fun.
said, like 5 places I was independent contracting for. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And then you were like, screw this, I'm just gonna do my own thing.
Well, it was kind of like, well, we moved to Hungary, which is like,
Oh.
yeah. So I had no idea what to expect. And we technically actually couldn't work while we were there. So that was a very weird,
Hmm.
like, shift in so many things because I went from totally in person coaching and I was like, I can't work. So I'm going to try to take some people online and I could do that on the side. Like that, it wasn't through the government, so
Sure.
like taxes and whatnot. So that was like bare bones online coaching. And then when COVID hit, I was like, okay, like here's some doors that opened into being able to do this
Hmm.
in a different capacity and something that I can actually take with me no matter if we move again.
Sure.
And and I was like, okay, I can do this on my own and not have to do it through someone else.
Right.
That's
How
where
did it, how you make it sound like it was so easy, right?
it was.
Like, oh, this happened. And then I moved into this. And then I did this. And, and that just happened. And I decided this. And it's funny because it feels like we have there's different details, but I totally get that. It was like I was coaching. I was a CrossFit coach. I did other coaching, strength training coaching, all the things, and then took on some clients for health coaching. And I'm like, oh, I like this. And I too was going to be a psychology major in college and couldn't figure out how that was going to work. But all the things like that. And I too moved to a small town and went, what am I going to do? Except the small town I moved in didn't have a garage or gym. So
Okay.
I created one in my own garage, but still. So going through all of that mentally, like all the shifts that you had to go through to get where you're at today, there had to be times where you just wanted to go, fuck it. I can't, I'm done. I'm over it or whatever. So how did you get through? Because that is, so what we're talking about today, right, is self-sabotage, but there's so many different aspects of self-sabotage, right? And it's never just the one thing that you think it is. There's always so many layers below that that we have to get to. It would have been easy for you to just throw it away, which is a form of self-sabotage, is to just say, I can't do this, or I don't want to do this, or it's just too much. How did you move through those times? And I would assume there were different things that you did based on the situations.
Mm. Yeah, and I think it's so funny that you said, "Oh, you just made it sound so easy," because that is like once you do it and you look back, it's like, "Oh, like here were the steps that I took and this is just what it was." But when you ask me that question, it's, I can visualize myself being in those situations and being like, "Oh my God, it was so freaking hard during it." There were so many times that I was like, "I can't do this," or did sabotage in certain ways. Like I could have been 5 steps ahead of where I'm at right now if I did XYZ, whatever. And that thought's not helpful either. But so I think some of the really, really hard and really helpful things that I kind of was forced into was when I moved overseas, I was taken out of my bubble of comfort, and that really forced me to grow. I was so uncomfortable, and I was taken so out of my element, and there were not the resources even. That was like 2018. So it was like 6 years ago, 6.5 years ago. And the amount of resources there are now online versus what there were then is just so wild. But I didn't know what to do. And so at that point, I kind of was forced to spend time with myself and my thoughts and my feelings
Oh
and
no. Oh no.
which is so uncomfortable and so necessary when it comes to growth. I was really lucky because in that circumstance, there were a lot of other American spouses who were in similar situations and were like, we don't feel like we have a purpose. We don't, we're in similar situations. Thankfully, one of them was a mental health professional and started a women's group where we just like met and chatted.
That's
And
fantastic.
it was so amazing because it really helped me in being able to process through those thoughts and feelings and identify where I was sabotaging because I didn't know what that was or what I was doing. And that was so key for me because it actually created awareness, because that's key when it comes to disrupting
Mm-hmm.
sabotaging patterns.
Mm-hmm.
And um yeah, and it just kind of like spread from there. I started to realize how much more confident I was when I approached doing hard things or things that I couldn't do, or changing. Like a lot during that time, I just very much pursued self development. I had a lot more time on my hands, and I was like, okay, how can I get better? How can I experience the world differently? How can I use this opportunity, which I always had a mindset of wherever I was? How can I use this opportunity versus sitting there being miserable? Because that's not a way to live life.
Mm-hmm.
So I also was able to explore in my nutrition personally, how I coached other people in their nutrition, with how I focused on my fitness, where my schedule was very different.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
So what were those differences for in terms of, so going across the pond, right? Going to a different country, having to change up your nutrition. What were the differences there? And then talk about, because it sounds like your schedule was much more fluid which I believe people think, oh my God, my life would be so much easier and I would be so much more healthy and I would eat better and I would train all the time and everything would be perfect if I just had this giant open schedule. So I know I make it sound so amazing. We both know it's not. And that's why I want you to talk about that, because I think that's one of the ways that women in particular sabotage ourselves is we say, well, if only it was like this. And then, I mean, there is some good things that came out of COVID. I mean, right. We learned a lot. But having all of the time to devote to that, I think is a myth for a lot of us, that we believe, oh, then everything in my life would be perfect. I would look so fantastic and I would do all the nutrition. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So where I was taken so much out of, I was in routine, day-to-day routine where I was at. And that's where, I mean, people love routine. Routine is great. And when your routine is taken away and you're put in an entirely different new setting, like you said, you have all the time in the world. You're like, okay, I could do this. The initial excitement. And then you're like, okay, this is actually a lot harder than I thought. So the areas that I saw for myself where I was sabotaging was I was getting kind of paralyzed in, well, what do I want to do? Well, I could do anything. I want to make sure I do it right. And then it would just be like, well, I'm just going to watch TV instead and figure it out later.
Mm-hmm.
Or with my nutrition, it was like, I literally have no idea what I'm looking at when I go to a grocery store. I cannot read the nutrition label. This is all different languages. So it was even mentally, it's so funny because I remember my first week there, it was like, well, I don't know what's in this, so I'm just gonna eat it anyway. And like it was like chocolate. Like, come on, Meryl. So like, let me just eat. Doesn't matter. I don't know what's in it. I'm just gonna eat things and have the experience where it was not intentional. It was very much sabotage in that place and point. I traveled a lot. Like once I got kind of established and I was like, I do have a lot of time. I really want to see the world. So I traveled a lot. And in the beginning, I got very stuck in this on track, off track mentality where when I was home, I'd be eating a specific way and kind of restrictive in at that time, working out. And when I was away, it was like, oh, okay, I'm away and I'm just going to eat whatever and it doesn't matter. And I would enjoy my time and then I'd feel kind of guilty when I got back. So I was sabotaging myself in that way as well. And from a business perspective, I think I don't have regrets here, I do want to say, because I think all of this time was purposeful for me. I also know that I could have done so much in growing my business during that time as well. Hindsight's 2020.
Always.
So I think I was sabotaging myself then as well because I was like, well, I can't do things the way that I did them before, so now I can't do anything.
Gotcha. It sounds like a lot of what you were going through at that time was just there were so many different things at one time that you felt really overwhelmed. And and I think that too, that speaks to what happens too, is like, oh, we have all these things that we can do. And then we go, and I'm going to watch Friends on TV, whatever it is, because we get super, super overwhelmed and we know we quote should be doing all of these things, and it's easy to go, well, I can do that in an hour. I can do that then. So do you feel like it was this giant sense of overwhelm, or do you feel like there were other things going on below the surface that caused you to kind of, and here's the thing, like, I want to say this right up front. I self-sabotage like nobody's business. Like I feel like a professional sometimes. Like don't try this at home, people. You're going to need a safety net. But for me, when I self-sabotage, like you said, half the time I don't know I'm doing it. It's just like, well, I just don't feel like doing whatever I'm supposed to be doing right now. But if I dig in a little bit, it's like self-sabotage isn't a bad thing. I don't think it's a bad thing.
No, it's not. I love that you said that because I always want to make that very clear where there's so much negativity when people talk about self-sabotage, but self-sabotage in and of itself is not inherently bad. It's actually just like a form of self-preservation or protection.
Mm-hmm.
And so your brain is essentially just like trying to help you stay comfortable, safe, and is trying to find kind of the easiest thing for you. And that's why I think a lot of the time it can be really frustrating, because sometimes people get stuck in a place of know knowing is one thing and doing is another thing. And
Hear
they're
that all
like,
the time.
I don't know why. I know, but I can't seem to do it. Or I know that I am sabotaging, or whatever people are saying. I shouldn't do this, or the naughty shoulds. But I don't know why I'm doing it. And this is where it takes digging in
Mm-hmm.
deep, because it sabotage is a pattern. You've
Mm-hmm.
done it before.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're aware, then you can actually stop it from happening or disrupt the pattern.
Yeah.
It's neat.
And it's interesting that you say, I had to write that down. Self-sabotage is self-preservation. I think that's a really great way to think about it for pretty much everybody.
Yeah.
Is and we always, as functional health coaches, right? We go back to what root cause. What's the root cause? Well, the root cause really is your brain is always trying to be as efficient as possible.
Yeah.
And creating patterns and routines is very efficient for your brain. So when like for your example where you were like taken completely out of everything you knew, your brain was like, holy shit, what is going on right now, Meryl? Stop doing it. Can we just move back? Can we just go? And
Right.
so your brain was trying to conserve energy,
Mm-hmm.
figure things out, and it's working so hard to it kind of pushes back against what's happening. It's trying to find your comfort for you,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so what do? It's like, okay, well, I'm going to tell you right now, my comfort is the television show Friends. And people think it's the funniest thing. Like people who know this about me, I will sit and do work. You come into my house at any point in time, Friends is on. Friends is on the television. I'm not kidding. It makes me very angry when like Wimbledon is on and I can't get the background noise of Friends and I don't watch it. I couldn't tell you how many times I've gone through the actual like series of it. I never watch it. My eyes don't veer from the work that I'm doing. But like you, like we move every 2 to 3 years. And I've done this for 15 years,
Mm-hmm.
16 years now. It's a lot. And previous to doing what we do now, I was in education. So full time, I was doing the same thing my husband was doing. And it was get up in the morning, go to CrossFit, have breakfast quick, walk the dog, go to work, take care of people all day long. Cause I was, a principal, come
Mm-hmm.
home, die, like eat and die. That was it. Um, but to do this business and move, so I don't have a core of people, which I'm sure you experienced in Bulgaria too, or when you were Hungary, right? You were in Hungary. Sorry.
Yeah.
Um, to find that group with that woman who helped you guys it gave you a sense of space. It gave you a place to be. It gave you some people to be with who understood what you were going through. So for me, I create that space by, listening to six people talk to each other all day long, whatever. However, that is a really great way to self-sabotage because you can get sucked into that because it feels comfortable. And then to have to bring yourself back into the discomfort of doing things is hard. How? I know you were like, well, I just created this awareness and I just sat down. No. You had to take some steps. There had to be some hard conversations with yourself and kind of like you had to create your own structure. How did you do that?
Yeah. So I want to make it very clear that the way that I talk about this now is because I have all of these tools and because I have all of this awareness and I can name it. However, when I was personally going through all of this stuff, it felt like a shit storm. Like it felt so chaotic. And there were so many times that I felt like I was failing or I wasn't doing good enough or that I, could have done better or I wish I did things differently or, you know, and I want to drive that home to everybody, is that the process of moving through these things is so sloppy and so messy, and that's what I think stops people a lot of the time. So once you do it and you gain that confidence, and you know, and your brain knows, like, hey, not everything is a threat. Not everything is threatening my safety, my comfort. And hey, I feel actually like really empowered and more confident, and I can do this hard stuff. When you go through it, you're going to do more of it. And where I'm at now, because I've been able to practice this for years and years and years now, is now I look for opportunity for challenge. Now I'm very aware of, oh, I'm sabotaging, or that's potentially going to be something where I try to sabotage, and I can change it now. But this was something where I just lacked skills. I lacked certain skills, and it took um a lot of that was allowing myself to get uncomfortable, allowing myself to go into things with the option of failing and not doing well, not doing it perfectly, because I'm someone who historically will back away from something if I can't do it to the expectation that the unrealistic expectation that I've set for myself.
Mhm.
So that is, I hope I answered that question.
You
Um,
did. You did.
okay.
You did. So it sounds like you figured out something wasn't working for you. Like this isn't working.
Yes,
And
and
you,
yes, sorry.
no, go ahead.
That's pretty spot on. It's like, okay, I'm not feeling better. Like I'm not like I really at that point in the beginning was like lacking purpose. And to be honest, when I was before we moved, I was so busy and so um pushing myself into taking care of other people so much that I didn't know what self-care really was actually. And I was so removed from feeling my feelings or acknowledging like anything in myself. So that was just uncomfortable in and of itself. Um, so that, yeah, that's what it was.
So isn't the universe a beautiful thing? Whatever you believe the universe to be, whatever that thing is for whomever you are, is fine. But it will that entity will put you in a space where you will grow or you won't. Like
Mhm.
you get all these opportunities and it feels like the universe said, "Hey Meryl, you're doing all of these great things over here for all these people and that's so great. So now we're just going to flip this because you need to take care of you, right? And learn how to take care of you." And what that did though, by having you have to sit down and take, I assume you took some small steps. You didn't like break off big chunks and were like, "Hey, I'm going to go climb the mountain and do all the things." But by having you have to do that, it has expanded your business,
Mhm.
probably in a way that you didn't think it would. And it helps you to help people in a much bigger and deeper way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is something like I know at this point, looking at then, I lacked a lot of skills, but one of the values that I held so deeply was that I wanted to live a very fulfilling life. I wanted to like make an impact. And I one thing that I always like why I got into coaching was because I wanted to help people. And so those things very much were drivers in what I did, and that flipping point of, okay, like none of the things I'm doing is helping me. It's just actually making me feel worse. So let me try some different things. And it was a lot of small, uncomfortable steps, but they were very expansive. And yes, like you said, that was so necessary. And I'm a better person because of it. I'm a lot more empathetic, and I am a way better coach. And the people that I help is like deep change now. It's not just like surface level kind of where I was at when I first started.
Yeah. And I would guess that if you were to go back and look at those small changes or small steps that you took, each small step created such a, even just an incremental increase in your self-confidence. Those, and they just start to add up and they start to snowball. And all of a sudden you wake up one day and you're like, wow, I'm a totally different person than I was before.
Yeah. That's the thing is like you gotta do the scary, uncomfortable, uncertain things in order to gain the confidence. That's
Mhm.
what I hear from everybody. I just want to be more confident. Like, cool.
Yeah. So
What?
how does that, so tell us about you as a coach using your experiences to help your clients. Is that really where the bang for your buck comes from with them? Because, and I wrote this down too, because I think people, I know that people have this belief that I'm going to sign on with this coach and everything is going to be fantastic from the jump, and they have all this knowledge, right? And you've heard this before, like, right? We have all this knowledge at our fingertips and we're going to help you be successful. But what a lot of people don't talk about is how sloppy and messy it is. And when it starts to get sloppy and messy, and I'm using your words because I wrote them down, when it starts to get sloppy and messy, people either have one of two ways to go. They're either going to back off and quit, or they're going to dig in and go, okay, I'm going to roll up my sleeves and I'm going to do this with you. And I feel like we as coaches, if we were going to draw a picture of ourselves, like that would be it, right? That would be, I'm going to, roll up my sleeves and I'm going to sloppy and messy with you, because it's supposed to be sloppy and messy. Don't you feel like that?
Yeah, I mean, that's the expectation that I set from the beginning when I start working with people is like, I know you're super excited right now. You're probably a little bit nervous too, but like, I think managing expectations from the get go is important. And a lot of people I work with also get stuck in, well, if isn't going accordingly to these extremely unrealistic expectations that you set, then it's not going well. And that's just not the case. So it's, it's not going to be perfect. And that is not even what I expect from you. I expect sloppy. I expect failing. I actually kind of want you to fail. And I'm going to help you navigate through it because, all the things that you want, feeling the way you want, looking the way you want, is learning how to navigate situations like that.
Yeah. And I think that's a really interesting way to say that to someone who comes to you. I want you to fail, because that's real life. Like, we fail every day, all the time. That's how it is. And it's part of that for you too is, I think that we need to really hit on this too, is you moved, you moved in 2018.
Hmm.
That was 6-ish years ago. And I have not once heard you say, I'm done struggling now. I don't ever self-sabotage. Everything is perfect. 6 years later, we are done. No.
Well, like nobody ever gets quote unquote there. And I
Mhm.
think that's also an unrealistic expectation people have. It's there's always going to be challenge. And you just get better at navigating the challenge. You gain more skills, you gain more experience, you gain more confidence. And so those challenges are like they still are likely going to be scary, and there are going to be times that you sabotage. I do that probably very often. I don't know, but it's just like I can recognize it a lot faster, and then I can more effectively and more efficiently face it, navigate it, grow from it. It's a lifelong thing. You just get better at managing it.
There you go. So if you were going to say one, like if you were going to encapsulate your concept of self-sabotage or how you work with your clients in terms of that topic, something kind of a little soundbite to get us, wrap this up in a nice, tidy little bow, what would you want everybody listening to know? I know that's a big question, so take your time.
Oh man, one soundbite. Um,
Or not a soundbite. It's fine.
The ease and the comfort that you are looking for is not always the best answer for you.
Right, not easy, right?
Yeah.
Right.
The there's there's an easy way and there's a hard way, seemingly. And you're gonna want to take that easy way. But the easy way leads to harder, and the hard way leads.
It does. Isn't that interesting? So interesting. I was just saying that yesterday to Joe. I was saying I'd rather have my hard be self-inflicted.
Yeah.
Like I would rather choose to push myself really, really hard in the gym, knowing it's going to be an hour, right, of just really hard. And that hard puts off the not self-inflicted hard, the disease, the stuff I don't have control over, right? So yeah, absolutely. And it's a real I feel like this whole conversation really went to the fact too that you have to choose to get uncomfortable. And when you see that self-sabotage come up, don't go, oh my goodness, oh, I can't believe I did this again. No, that's when you get really happy. Like, look, self-sabotage, it's here. Welcome. Let's sit down and talk, right? More of that as opposed to feeling the guilt, the shame, all of those things that people say we're supposed to feel, is to just welcome it as that guide.
Yeah, I think that's, you're not going to always go to like, yay. Like we all say like, failing is great. And it's like, you don't have to be like stoked that you failed. However, just know that, if you recognize the sabotage, like celebrate the fact that you recognized it. And then you can move forward in doing it differently. And that's what is really freaking cool. And then celebrate that too.
Absolutely. And you know what? Having someone to help you and guide you and walk beside you on that journey is so important. And just to point out, hey, right here, this might be a good spot to start with self-sabotage. Let's look at that. So, speaking of that, why don't you let everybody know how they can find you on all the socials and everywhere else?
Sure. I have an Instagram. My personal one is at Meryl CBC, and then at Wicked Iron Strength. I post a lot on both of them, valuable things.
You're a power lifter. That's exciting.
Yeah, so I lift lots of heavy shit
Yeah.
and pretty much post often about doing the hard things and how to navigate that. I also have an email list that I send out weekly emails, usually a few times a week. And you can get on that through my website, wickedironstrength.com, or you can email me at meryl@wickedironstrength.com.
Wonderful. I love that, and I love that you brought that up because that is what I see when I look at your social media. And I always try to kind of encapsulate in my brain, right? My brain likes to do those things, is your social media really is in that value statement of let's do the hard things. I'm going to show you, like, let's do it. And I'm going to walk the walk and I'm going to talk the talk. And I just love that. You are so, so very authentic. That is fantastic.
Thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.